Communication is very important in each and every organization. So whether you are an employee or employer, right? So whether you are a manager in each and every department. So communicating in team and organizations. This is the topic today. I'm just going to explain. So the learning objective of this topic is to explain why the communication is so important in organizations and discuss the four influences on effective communication and coding and decoding. Compare and contrast some of the advantages and disadvantages of digital written communication channels and other verbal communication channels and non-verbal communication. Discuss the relevance of synchronization or synchronicity, social presence, social acceptance, media richness when choosing the preferred communication channel. Discuss various barriers, noises, obstacles to the effective communication, including cross culture, gender based differences in the communication. Explain how to get your message across more effectively and summarize the element of the active listening. Describe effective communication strategies in organizational hierarchies and review the role and relevance of the organizational grapevine, that is informal communication. Slack is one of the organization, right? So emerging enterprise communication platform. Lot of platforms are available these days, like which is internet based, technology based. Slack is one from them. Slack is an instant messaging program designed by Slack Technologies and owned by Salesforce, which is also CRM software, one of the CRM software, customer relationship management software. Slack and other enterprise grade digital platform have become hugely popular communication tool in contemporary is the latest modern organizations, but they also create new issues about how to communicate effectively. So in this, if we talk about email is being pushed aside as organizations adapt emerging enterprise communication. We have different platforms. If we talk about the digital platforms, we have a lot of platform to communicate with the employees and internal and external people, such as one is a Slack in this example. Next is Microsoft Teams, then Workplace by the Facebook, and lot of many others. Some digital conversation are becoming distractions, like people checking too often and clustered. The problem that digital channels are ineffective for complex and ambiguous topics. Communication and its importance. So what is the definition of a communication here? This is a process by which information is transmitted and understood between two or more people. Importance is coordinating work activities, better decision making, changing others' behavior, and this is also good for employees. So employees' well-being. If we talk about the employees' well-being, what does it mean? It means conveying knowledge that helps employees better manage their work environment. And communication events fulfill the drive to bond and support the self-worth and also help in the social identity. Now we have here the communication process model. Here on the left hand side, we see that the sender form and encodes message and that will be converted into some words, right? So these two, that will be converted into some words, maybe in the gesture, maybe some noise here, right? Or maybe in other symbols or sign. This is what we can say the sender form. Then encoded message is transmitted to intended receiver, right? So we are just going to send some messages. So encoding of the message that we put it here in the encoded form, encoded, which is transmitted to the intended receiver through one or more communication channel, which is known as media. Now on the other side, we see that the receiver receive encoded message. Whatever the message which was encoded is received by the receiver. So receiver senses the incoming messages and decode it, right? So this point is, you can say, decode messages, right? So decode it into a something meaningful message, right? Something meaningful, ideally, and decoded meaning is what the sender has intended or planned. Now we have sender look. So here what we can see, that senders look for the evidence that the other person received and understood the transmitted message, maybe a formal or informal. So that is, you can say, feedback, encoded feedback to the receiver. And the receiver then decode the feedback. So encoding here for the feedback and encoding here for the message at the very beginning. So if we talk about the feedback, so feedback repeats the communication process exactly the same way at the time of sending the information to the receiver. Next, we have coding, decoding differences across generation. So today's multi-generational workforce create communication challenges because each generation has increasingly divergent communication channel, and they have their own preferences, ability, and even code book. 55% of Gen Z, means Generation Z workers, around 18 to 20 years of old, prefer online chat, instant messages, quick messages, whereas 85% of the baby boomers prefer face-to-face communication. Means 1/3 of them have never used instant messages. So baby boomers are like the people who are aged. And if we talk about some more data, 82% of the Canadian employees, if you talk about, right, so 82% globally say that differences in the communication style is the most important difference with working in a multi-generational workplaces. Now this is what we have, right? So encoding and decoding. So now the question arises, how to improve? So improving communication, coding and decoding. There are some four main factors that influences the effectiveness of encoding and decoding process. The first one is the sender and the receiver have similar code book. It means so what is code book first? The code book is a dictionary of symbols, which includes some like languages, gestures, idioms, and other tools used to convey the information. That is the code book. Now, the benefits of the similar code book. What are the benefit of that, right? So this is, I'm explaining the first point right now. More accurate communication, first of all, is a similar meaning of symbols. One symbol, similar meaning for all the people that are in the communication channel. More effective communication means less need to repeat message again and again, right? So in different ways. So that may be the benefit for the similar code book that we have in our organization. The second is sender has experience encoding the message. So what does it mean? It means that more experience with the subject matter and particularly to the specific audience. Sender learns which word work best for accuracy and persuasion. So persuasion means to convince the people, right? So they should be ready to do something or accept it. That is known as persuasion. Third one is sender and receiver are motivated and able to use the selected channel. So now, in this case, both use the communication channel effectively. So means text messaging proficiently. Both enjoy using a channel that increase communication efforts. The fourth one is sender and receiver have shared mental model of communication context. So it means the mutual understanding of the communication setting or communication environment. For example, a nuclear plant technicians have a mutual understanding of nuclear plant control room, and they require less communication about the context and increase the accuracy transfer of meaning about the communication context. In the nuclear plant, some information is maybe written words and placed on the board somewhere. For each and everyone, they have easy access to the code. They can get that information very easily with the same meaning. Now, the next point here is the digital written communication. So, what is that? So, digital written communication, maybe the text messages are digital, right? Uh, we can say this is one of the example here in front of you. But what is that? The two main type of communication channels are there. The one is the verbal, and second one is non-verbal. So verbal means the using of some words that occurs through the spoken or written channel. But if we talk about the non-verbal communication or non-verbal channel, any part of communication that does not use words is a non-verbal communication. Now, earliest digital written communication, that was the ARPANET, ARPANET and Usenet. These are the two organizations that are earliest digital written communication channel. If we talk about this company, ARPANET is a US Advanced Research Product Agency network, was the first public packet switched computer network. It was first used in 1969 and finally decomposed in 1989. So ARPANET's main use was for academic purpose and also for the research and development purposes. Now, so digital written communication is rapidly evolving in the workplace. So digital written communication. So changing generation preferences, emerging workplace communication platform. It means we can say that if you talk about the emails, email used significantly more often than any other communication channel, but has fallen significantly over the past 5 years, from 75% to 56%. This is one of the research which is done. If we talk about the Generation Z employees, those are younger than 20, mid 20s. Only group that use less email than other channels at work. Specifically, they use more online chat, online text messages. So online chat and text message is the fastest growing channel. This is also one study, one research, that from the 6% to 28% over the past 5 years, it has increased. So changes, these are the changes. The changes are happening day by day. So change is due to number one, that is because of the generational preferences, and second change is reason is emerging workplace platform. Now, this is the digital written communication. And what are the benefits of digital written communication? We know that this is the preferred form of communication channel. So, preferred channel for sending well-defined information for the decision maker and coordination work. It can be written, edited, and transmitted quickly. Can be sent to many people simultaneously. One message to all the people. Just like in the organization, take an example of one college. If the college professor is going to send one message, they send like quickly in one shot, that message is transmitted and communicated to all the students, right? So this is very effective. So digital written communication is more and more effective these days. Some channels have some search engines, somewhat more efficient filling cabinets, increases upward communication to people further up to the hierarchies, and may reduce status differences but still exist. So it means the potentially reduces the status differences between the sender and the receiver, but was a subtle form of status differences that remains. For example, the speed of response. Some people are more responsiveness, means the quick responsiveness, and elite font signatures. Potentially, that may reduce the stereotyping and prejudice, but may increase the reliance on the stereotypes. So problems with the digital written communication. So digital written communication is first of all is a text messages chatting. But communication have some problems. What are the problems? Communicates emotions poorly. So digital messages lack a parallel non-verbal communication channel that conveys the emotional meaning of words, means the facial expressions. People are getting better at conveying the, through other symbols like emojis and words. From there they can show some emotions, like something like in emoji there's some black color or something like that. They just try to, right? But in text messaging they are just using their non-verbal communication, just trying to do that. Hmm? But even then there is some emotions, like some emotions we cannot express. Hmm? Reduce the politeness and the respectfulness, right? So people write digital messages with content that they would not say face to face. Sometimes they are not in position, they when they are in the face to face position they can say something good or bad, but when they are on chat just they forget about it. They don't say some of the messages which they can say with the help of these written communication. So written digital channels have low social presence, that we know, more impersonal, right? So less empathy and less sensitivity. Hmm? And receive infer or a more negative interpretation that was intended. Sometimes we can say inefficient for ambiguous or complex novel situations, and increase information overloaded. So some messages are created, and copied into many people with little efforts required. Just we copy and paste and send a message to everyone, right? It means to everyone the emotions is same, but in reality when each and every person that you talk and communicate in a face to face, your emotions will be different with each one, right? But for here same emotions, everything same wording. That is also one of the problem in the digital written communication. Now, if we talk about the workplace communication through the social media is hot, and social media is really good thing for having effective communication, a fast communication channel for making advertisement, for promotion, and everything. So, the digital communication channels that enable people to collaborate in the creation and exchange of user generated content writer. A lot of content writers are here in the market. They just write content for you. If you are not able to do that, you can hire them. Now, if we talk about the channels are social, yes, most of the channels are social, and these social channels that enable reciprocally and interactive content, and user provide feedbacks, user provide links, you can edit it, so user generated messages. So various social medias diverse function. So it means presenting the individual identity, right, and enabling the conversation and sharing of the information, and sensing others online presence and maintain the relationship and revealing the reputation and also the status. Non-verbal communication. So the non-verbal communication, if we say, that includes some actions, facial gestures, physical distances, and silence. So differ from the verbal communication by less rule bonds and mostly automatic and non-conscious. So it means that most information is communicated non-verbally, like a parallel conversation. So no doubt this is differ from the verbal communication by being less root bound, means that therefore more ambiguous and susceptible to the misinterpretations, right? So we know that mostly automatic and non-conscious, so therefore some non-verbal communication or communicates the same meaning across culture, like smile. It's the same meaning for most of the cultures. Smile means person is happy. Emotions, contagion. Contagion is like contagious. Contagious means like spreading. Just like we can say in the medical terms, there are some contagious diseases, right? So means the spreading diseases, just like the coronavirus last time, that was a contagious disease, like contagious infections or virus, right? So spreading. So same way, if we talk about the emotional contagion, contagion, so that it is related to empathy, and which is like you can say sympathy. Non-conscious process of sharing another person's emotions by mimicking that person's facial expression and other non-verbal processes serve the three purposes. The first one is that provide a continued feedback that we understand and empathize with the sender. The second one is improves empathy, so better emotional understanding of other person's experiences, and fulfill drive to bond. Mean if that is a contingent experiences, develop a relationship like a mutual experience. Next we have choosing channels, mean synchronous or synchronicity. So accent that a channel require or allow the both sender and receiver to be actively involved in the conversation at the same time. Mean that is known as synchronous. I gave one example in the class, that at the time that if that I'm going to give a lecture to all of you, someone like sending a message to me, just asking one question on my mobile phone. At the same time, that is a synchronous, but at a different time, asynchronous, right? Synchronous, and the other is non-asynchronous. Face-to-face conversation, right? So almost always that will be synchronous most. And digital text communication, if we talk about, that will be asynchronous. So text messages, if we talk about, maybe asynchronous, but often synchronous at online chatting. But all these are depending upon something. So it depends upon their contingency variability. So time urgency, sometime immediately, right? Immediately means if there is a high immediacy emergency, and use synchronous when urgent. And the next we have complexity of the topic. So once we have a complexity of the topic, use synchronous when complex. Means at the same time that you can communicate, the communication channel should be open with the going back and forth. Cost of a synchronous communication at the same time, it means they use asynchronous when synchronous is the costly or inconvenience. Whether received should have time to reflect before responding. So use asynchronous when reflection time is helpful. Choosing channel. Now, which channel that should be selected or chosen? And a social presence. Extent that a communication channel create a psychological closeness to others, awareness of their humanness, and appreciation of the interpersonal relationship. Now we have face to face. So face to face usually highest social awareness. An email to the large distribution list mean using low social awareness. Now the high social presence with the synchronous communication and casual personal message contents. So high social presence that increase uh, empathy. So empathize with other when there is higher social presence. We have some empathy, we have some feeling for other people when there is more and more social presence. And also the second is when there is the higher social presence, that definitely increase influence. Instead of just sending messages to the mobile phone or chatting softwares, if you have a face-to-face conversation, definitely the influences that increase. So extent that the channel is approved and supported by others, I mean receiver, team, organization or society for that purpose. But all this is depends upon something. Social acceptance of the channel is influenced by some uh, some norms held by other involved in the communication events, right? For example, here the email or text messages is the norm in some organizations, whereas the face-to-face interaction is expected more in other department or firms. Individual preferences for using the channel. So mean individual preferences for the specific communication channel, if we talk about. For particular channel, uh, each and everyone have their own preference to use the channel. Some people like emails, other people like a texting message. So some co-workers ignore or rarely check the voicemail, but quickly respond to the text messages or email. A symbolic meaning of a channel, that some channels are perceived as more professional than casual, and some channels convey a greater degree of urgency, means like the phone call versus email. Now if you talk about richness, so media richness, the communication channels uh, data carrying capacity, the volume and variety of information that can be transmitted during specific time. Now, communication channel has high richness when channel conveys the multiple cues. For example, both verbal and non-verbal information, right? And those which allow timely feedback from the receiver to the sender, because sender have sent some messages. If there is some questions or information, this is now the turn to of the receiver that will send some feedback or message to the sender as well. Allow customized messages. So allow the sender to customize the message. And next is make use of a complex symbols like words with multiple meanings. Next, we have hierarchy of media richness. So the highest to the face to highest for the face to face. So media richness, the face to face. This is also one of the media. So on the top you can say the face to face. The face to face is the highest rich medium of communication, right? So on the left hand side, means on the y-axis, you can say the communication channels richness from the lean means lean medium to the rich medium. The first one is the face-to-face is a communication environment on the on the x-axis. So transmit verbal and non-verbal and get almost immediate feedback from the receiver and quickly adjust the message and style and use complex languages. Right? So we can see the face-to-face, then we can see the video conferencing, the telephone, instant messages, web logs, email, then we have newsletter and financial statements. So the lowest for the lean medium is the financial statement, newsletter and email. Now we have some exception to the media richness. What are those? So media richness theory does not apply as well to the digital communication channel. The reason behind is that only because of the ability to multi-communicate through the lean channels. For example, the text messaging while listening to the discussion at the large meeting. More varied proficiency level. For example, experienced smartphone users can process messages quickly. Next, we have social presence effect. Learn channels have lean channel have less social distraction than media rich channels. So high media richness channel tend to have more social presence. Now if we talk about the communication channels and persuasion. So what the persuasion meaning here is the use of facts, logical arguments, emotional appeals to change other person's belief and attitude, usually for the purpose of changing the person's behavior. Now, the first, if we say the spoken communication, particularly the face-to-face interactions, is more persuasive way because of some reasons. It is typically accomplished by non-verbal communication. For example, animated hand gestures and can amplify the emotions tone of the message. And it often it offers the sender high quality immediately feedback written or not the receiver understands and accept the message, and sender can adjust more quickly than the written communication. has high social presence. So it has high social presence. Listeners are more motivated to pay attentions and consider the sender's idea. But written communications can be persuasive when more technical detail is required. We have some barriers. So barrier related to the communication. So what are the barriers we have? The first barrier we can see that imperfect perceptual process. It means the receiver don't listen as well as the sender assume. Sender assume that the message I have sent it, that the receiver has received and understood. There may be some assumptions. That can be a barrier. Our need and expectation influences what signals get noticed and what signals get ignored. So that is also imperfect perceptual process. Even we can add one more, that the senders overestimates how well other people understand the message. And the second one is the language problem. This is also one of the obstacle and the barrier in the way of effective communication. The language problem. Number of languages are there. Different languages or a different meaning to the same word. And ambiguous language, if we talk about that, cause misunderstanding but may appropriate to minimize the emotional response. Ambiguous, if you talk about more on the languages, ambiguous language isn't always dysfunctional. Ambiguous language may reflect the ambiguity of the topic or effort to avoid unwanted emotional responses. Jargon. If we talk about the jargon, it's a design to improve the communication efficiency. Become noise. The jargon become noise when specialized word or phrase are transmitted to the people who do not have the jargon code book. If you talk about the filtering here, so filtering means like this is also one of the communication barrier which delete or delay the negative information. Using less harsh or means less uh, emotive words, so the message sounds more favorable. The last one is the information overload. So information overload, if we talk about jobs, information load exceed person information processing capacity. Result will be information get overlooked or misinterpreted. Information processing capacity, if we talk about, right? So that result in the information get overlooked and misinterpreted, right? The amount of information an employee is able to process is a fixed unit of time. Now if we talk about information load, right? The amount of information to be processed per unit of time means information loads varies across the time within a job. Information overload problems means the noise. The information get overlooked or misinterpreted. So when people can't process it uh, so fast enough, or maybe some poorer decisions and a higher stress that will be found. Now managing information overload. So how we can manage information overload is there, for example, right? So how we can manage the information overload? So information overload can be managed to increase the information processing capacity, means to learn to read faster, scan through the documents more effectively, time management, remove distractions and temporary work longer hours, or maybe reduce information load. Hmm? maybe buffering, omitting, and summarizing. Buffering means like having incoming information filtered. Omitting means overlooking messages, and summarizing means reading executive summaries. In this way, the problems and the barriers in the communication can be solved. Now, cross-culture communications. Language problem, first of all. Parties have a limited vocabulary or a different code book, and send distort the usual sound of word. If we talk about intonation, the voice intonation differences, culture differences in how loudly, how deeply, and quickly people speak, and that affect the message meaning due to the culture differences in the meaning of intonation. So culture difference in the meaning of silence. If you're silence, there may be some different thinking about the people. Mean sometime you can say interpersonal harmony, say like they are disagreeing for something if you are silent and without offending. And sometime it may show the respect and the thoughtful reflections, or sometime it can say empathizing without words. So non-verbal differences, non-conscious or in involuntary non-verbal cues tends to have the same meaning across culture. That already explained the smiling. Non-verbal differences and meaning varies from the deliberate gestures. Now, if we talk about the gender communication differences, so very interesting. If you talk about the men and women, so both are different. So different in their communication style. Although these differences tend to be less frequent or obvious than some other source that suggest. Now, if we talk about the men, men more likely as compared to the women like engage in rapid talk, right? So view interaction as impersonal and efficient information exchange, right? So for men, give advice and request directly, but for women, give advice and request not directly, indirect way, right? The same thing, but in a different way, indirect way, not directly. Men are dominant power and conversation style, but for the women, if we talk about the differential conversation style, apologize less often for men, but women like apologize more often. Less sensitive to non-verbal cues, but on the other side, more sensitive to the non-verbal cues. In the especially face-to-face meetings. Now, getting your message across. So, first is empathize. It means being sensitive to words that may be ambiguous or trigger the wrong emotional responses. Repeat the message means, for example, rephrase the key point of maybe a couple of times and use it timely or timing effectively. Find a time when the receiver is the less likely to be distracted. This is also one of the very important message. Sometimes you receive a message at the evening, right? So in that case, you are free just sitting on the couch and you can receive messages at that particular time. Next is be deceptive. Focus on the problem, not the person, right? So descriptive. It should be descriptive. When communicating bad news or criticism, so then this is the way that we can use the messages. Now, SER, right? So sensing, evaluating, and responding. So first, this is the part of the active listening. So active listening processes and strategies. Now, first, if we talk about the sensing means the, like we have postponed evaluation, means not forming an opinion until the speaker has finished. We are just getting information. It means just we are sensing something. Whatever is being said in the meeting, the audience is just sensing, and they are just postponing that evaluation part at the end of the conversation. Avoid interruptions, because this is the sensing part. In the sensing part, nobody is going to ask any questions, like in the college, like if a professor is going to give a lecture, nobody is going to interrupt, while if the instructions are already given that this will be the communication part, the question and answer part that will be held later on when the presentation will be over. So that is the sensing part. Avoiding interruptions. Maybe in the meeting in the organization, if the employer or the manager or the boss is in the meeting and just going to explain some of the new products they have launched, so the what are the features of the new product, price and policies, so they're just going to explain in a first, and they explain this one, the whatever the questions that you will be having in your mind, later on that you will be able to just ask a number of questions once everything all finished. So in this case, what happened, that maintains interest. All these comes under the sensing part, and stay motivated to listen to the speaker. Now, once the sensing part is finished, evaluation. So evaluating mean empathize. Empathize mean understand, be sensitive to the speaker's feeling, be sensitive to the speaker thoughts and situation. That is evaluating part. Now, the one thing empathize is there, right? Need to understand everything about the boss, that you are understanding the boss or employer or a manager. And here that you are going to organize the information, means assign the speaker's ideas to the catalog or categories. Now the last is the responding. Now show interest. For example, maintain the sufficient eye contact and send back signals that I see. Yeah, for example, clarity of some messages, and rephrase the speaker's ideas at appropriate breaks. And so you are saying that. So now here direct communication with John Legere. So former T-Mobile is a very famous company. It's a T-Mobile US companies, right? CEO John, that communicate actively and directly with the company's customers and employees. And he hold town hall meetings, tweets more often, and travels continuously to face to face chat with the staff, right? So this is also like T is the owner of CEO of the company, right? It's a very famous personality because of the direct communication with the people. This is also the right way of having and doing communications. Communication in hierarchies, if we talk about the workspace design, in the workspace design, we can see communal areas, open space, offices, and team space. Uh, Now, in this case, we can say redesigning hallways, means area. Now we are talking about the area, hallways, offices, maybe the cubicle or maybe the communal areas. Open space offices like definitely increase the social interaction among the staff, and there will be more communication. Team space, if we talk about, so that will be the employee into the team space, isolate into group but engage uh, the communication with the people outside the team, right? So maybe you can say take an example of common lunch facilities, right? Lunch room. Digital communication, if we talk about, right? So digital based organizational communication. This is the real time news from the employees on the enterprise platform or replacing the company's news. So, take an example of digital communication. Now we can say wikis, collaborative document creations and problem and error and long-term employee commitment to wiki development. And company news increasingly through emerging enterprise collaborative platform, maybe employee written blogs, shared notices, text messages, and real-time communication, user feedback. The third one, we have the direct communication with the top management, right? So in this case, like town hall meetings, executive brief staff at a large gathering and more personal and credible, an opportunity to answer the employees questions. There will be a question and answer session in the town hall meetings. Roundtable forums, a small representation of employee and listen to the staff opinions on some issues if they have or they are just facing in the organization. Then managing by wandering around, like regularly chatting casually with employees, less information filtering, that employees might develop a better empathy and with executives. Now, at the end, we are going to say what is organizational grapevine. Grapevine is what? So, grapevine is spreading rumor and gossip information. For example, some employees are working in the organization. One employee said to someone other regarding like, oh, so look that other people have weird and dress up badly. So this information is spreading very quickly to the other employees, right? So maybe sometime negative or maybe sometime positive. So that is known as a grapevine informal communication, or which is we can say is an unstructured and informal network founded on the social relationship rather than organization chart or job description. So grapevine dynamics have changed due to the social media and other digital trends. So grapevine, there are some benefits of the grapevine as well. So what are some of the benefits if we talk about the fill in the missing information, like not available through the formal channel. Some of the information is not available through the formal channel. So that information can be available through the informal way of communication, which is also known as grapevine, or this is one of the main benefit here. And second benefit, if we talk about the strengthen the corporate culture. So definitely the people, they are just going to talk and communicate some their own stories, experience and everything. So then it will definitely, the corporate culture will improve. Relax anxiety. Some of the works are more of attentions or something, right? So more active during time of uncertainty, when they talk with each other, they just have some relax of mind, and associated with the drive to bond and drives to the social interactions. So these are the benefits of so, but if there is some benefits, there may be some limitations as well. So distorted or exaggerated information, some of the information there may be, but that can maybe exaggerated the information, that might be escalate rather than reduce the anxiety. So sometimes there is the negative effect of that. Employees develop a more negative attitude towards the organization when management is slower than the grapevine.